Everybody good? Megan, that keeps snacking? All right, we continue. We have an intellectual audience, so as you guys might have seen, Wiebe Wieling is on our program right now. And I have good news and bad news. Let's start with the bad. He is in Sarasota Memorial Hospital right now. He flew in 2 days ago and called us at 3 in the morning on Wednesday morning, and he has kidney stones. So the good news is we have our first speaker for PINC Sarasota 2 already lined up for next year. So we look at the positives. But we huddled in PINC fashion and said, what do we do? How do we fill this gap? And we looked at an old friend. Dan Meyer was with us at PINC 11 in Holland. He's American. He has won an Ig Nobel Prize at Harvard for medicine. He's a 35-time world champion, and he's very interested in stretching limits, people stretching their limits. That's all I'm going to say. So here to tell his story and helping us out for a second time is Dan Meyer.
Thank you, El. There once was a king in India, a Maharaja, and for his birthday a decree went out that all the chiefs should bring gifts fit for the king. Some brought fine silks, some brought fancy swords, some brought gold. At the end of the line came walking a very wrinkled little old man who had walked many days' journey from his village by the sea. As he walked up, the king's son asked, "What gift do you bring for the king?" And the old man slowly opened his hand to reveal a very beautiful seashell with swirls of purple and yellow, red and blue. And the king's son said, "That's no gift for a king. What kind of gift is that?" The old man looked up at him slowly and said, "Long walk, part of gift." Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to bring you a gift that I believe is a gift worth spreading, a gift that I believe can change your life as it's changed mine. But before I do, let me take you on my long walk. Like most of you, I started life as a little kid, born young. How many of you started life as a little kid? About half of you, okay. And the rest of you, what? You were born full grown? Man, I want to meet your mama. Talk about impossible. As a little kid, I always had a fascination with doing the impossible. The week before my 21st birthday, 2 things happened in one day that would change my life forever. Then, 20 years later, I discovered the secret for actually doing the impossible. But today is a day I've been looking forward to for many years, because today is a day I'm going to actually attempt to do the impossible right before your very eyes, right here today at PINC Sarasota. I'm going to prove to you that the impossible is not impossible. And I'm going to show you that you can do the impossible in your lives, but I'm going to need your help. First of all, I need you to close your eyes. Think back to when you were a little kid. Think back to your biggest dreams. What were your greatest dreams as a little kid? Where did you want to go? What did you want to do? Who did you want to be? Did you ever want to do something really remarkable with your life? Did you ever want to really do the impossible? Now think back to your biggest fears. What were your greatest fears that kept you from following your dreams? Now open your eyes. In my quest to do the impossible, I've learned that there are 2 things that are universal among people around the world. Some people have talked about quests and being universal. In my quest, I've found there are 2 things that are universal. One, that like a double-edged sword, everyone has fears and everyone has dreams. In my calling as a sword swallower, I found that there are 2 questions that I get asked every day. The second most common question is, how do you do it? But the number 1 question is not how, but why. That's right. I can answer that in 3 words: dodgeball, Superman, and mosquito. Make sense? No? So let me take you on my journey, my long walk from fears to dreams, from words to swords, from dodgeball to Superman to mosquito, from fearing what's possible to actually doing the impossible. And when I'm done, I'm going to bring you a little gift that I believe is a gift worth spreading. October 4th, 2007, my heart was racing, my knees were shaking as I stepped foot on stage at legendary Sanders Theater at Harvard University to accept the 2007 Ig Nobel Prize in Medicine for a little medical research paper I co-wrote called Sword Swallowing and Its Side Effects. It was published in a little magazine I'd never read before, the British Medical Journal. I think Alexander said he's familiar with it. And for someone like me, this was an unexpected surprise, an impossible dream come true, an honor I would never, ever forget. But it wasn't the most memorable day of my life. October 4th, 1967, this scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid stepped in front of his class. His heart was racing, his knees were shaking. He opened his mouth to speak. He stood there paralyzed in panic, terrified in tears, sick to his stomach, frozen in fear. That scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid suffered from extreme fears. He had fear of the dark. He had fear of spiders and snakes. Anybody here? He had a fear of water and sharks. Anybody? He had a fear of doctors and nurses and dentists and needles and drills and sharp objects. He had a fear of heights. Anybody? But he had so many fears, he even had a fear of widths. More than anything, he had a fear of people. That scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid suffered from low self-esteem, inferiority complex, fear of failure and rejection, and something we didn't even know you could sign up for back then, social anxiety disorder. That scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid was me. Because I had fears, the bullies would tease me. They used to laugh and call me names. They never let me play in any of their reindeer games. Okay, there was one game they let me play in, dodgeball, and I was not a good dodger. I can still remember the smell of that stinky gym. And the bullies would call my name, and I'd look up, and I'd see those pink dodgeballs off in the distance, hurtling at my face at supersonic speed, and I'd think, why is the little pink dot getting bigger? And then it hit me. Bam, bam, bam. And I remember many days walking home from school. My face was red and stinging. My ears were red and ringing. My eyes were burning with tears. And their words were burning in my ears. And whoever said sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me, it's a lie. Words can cut like a knife. Words can pierce like a sword. Words can make wounds that are so deep they can't be seen. So I had fears, and words were my worst enemy. Still are. But I also had dreams. I would run home to my Superman comics, and I dreamed I wanted to be a superhero. I wanted to be a superhero like Superman, a man of steel. I wanted to fight for truth and justice. I wanted to fight against villains and kryptonite. I wanted to fly around the world doing superhuman feats and saving lives. And I had a fascination with things that were real. I would read Guinness World Records. Anybody read that? Ripley's Believe It or Not book. I saw real people doing real feats. And I vowed, if those bullies wouldn't let me play in their sports games, I vowed I wanted to do real magic, real feats, things the other kids could not do. I wanted to find my purpose and calling. I wanted to know my life had meaning. I wanted to do something really remarkable with my life and change the world. I wanted to prove somehow that the impossible was not impossible. There it is. Fast forward 10 years, April of 1978. It was a week before my 21st birthday, and two things happened in one day that would change my life forever. It was a hot, humid, muggy day in Tamil Nadu, South India, Thiruvannamalai, where I was living as a short-term missionary in India. And my buddy, Greg Ormson, was my mentor. He said, "Do you have thromes, Daniel?" I said, "Thromes? What are thromes?" And Greg said, "Thromes are major life goals, like a bucket list. Like if you could go any place you wanted to go, do anything you wanted to do, be anyone you wanted to be, where would you go, what would you do, who would you be?" Thromes are thriving on goals and dreams. I said, "Oh man, I can't do that. I'm too scared. I got too many fears." That night I took my little rice mat up on the roof of the bungalow where we were living in Thiruvannamalai. It was about 105 degrees out, hot, humid night, and I stretched out on my rice mat to watch the bats dive bombing for mosquitoes. And all I could think about was thrones and goals and fears and those bullies with the dodgeballs. A few hours later, I woke up. My heart was racing, my knees were shaking, but this time it was not with fear. My entire body was convulsing, wet with sweat, my brain burning up with 105-degree malaria fever. And for the next 5 days, I was in and out of consciousness on my deathbed fighting for my life. And when I was conscious, all I could think about was thrones, what I wanted to do with my life if I made it to my 21st birthday. Finally, on the night before my 21st birthday, in a moment of clarity, I came to a realization. I realized that that little teeny tiny mosquito, Anopheles stevensii, that weighed less than 5 micrograms, less than a grain of salt, if that little mosquito could take out a 180-pound man, I realized that mosquito was my kryptonite. And then I realized, no, it's not the mosquito. It's even smaller than that. It's that little parasite inside the mosquito, Plasmodium falciparum, that killed at that time over 1 million people a year and had killed more people since the beginning of time than any other disease. Then I realized, no, it's even smaller than that. But to me, it seems so much greater. I realized that fear was my kryptonite, my parasite, that had crippled and paralyzed me my entire life. You know, there's a difference between danger and fear. Danger is real. Fear is a choice. And I realized I had a choice. I could either live in fear and die of failure, or I could face my fears, kill my fears, put my fears to death, and dare to live, dare to reach for my dreams. You know, there's something about being on your deathbed and facing death that really makes you appreciate life. And I realized it's in dying that we live. Everyone dies. Not everyone really lives. It's at the edge of death that the point of life begins. Learn to die, dare to live. So that night, I decided I wanted to change my story, change my life. So I prayed a little prayer, and I decided I was going to choose life. I prayed a little prayer, and I said, God, if you'll let me live to my 21st birthday, I will not let fear rule my life any longer. I'm going to put my fears to death. I'm going to take on risks and challenges. I want to find my purpose and calling, know my life has meaning. I want to do something remarkable with my life to change the world. I want to reach for my dreams. I want to prove the impossible is not impossible. Now, I won't tell you if I survived until my 21st birthday or not. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. But that night, my life changed forever. Actually, I told you earlier I started life as a little kid. Actually, that's not true. I started life, actually really living life on my 21st birthday, because that night I made my list of my first 10 thrones. I decided if I were going to live, I wanted to do some crazy stuff with my life. So I set a list of 10 thrones. I decided I wanted to visit all the 7 wonders of the world, live on a bunch of different continents, visit all the continents, learn a bunch of languages, live on a ship in the ocean, live on a deserted island, live with a tribe of Indians in the Amazon, work with a circus, work in the music business in Nashville. Where's LZ? I wanted to see Mount Everest at sunrise. I wanted to jump out of an airplane. And over the next 20 years, I accomplished most of those thrones. And every time I check one throne off my list, I'd add 5 or 10 more thrones onto my list, so that my list of thrones grew just like my dreams. For the next 7 years, I lived on a little tiny deserted island in the Bahamas, Little Stirrup Key in the Bahamas. It was not quite like living in Antarctica, but for me, 7 years living by myself, wearing a loincloth in a thatch hut, spearing sharks and stingrays to eat, I learned to not be afraid of the water. I learned to swim with sharks 6 to 8 hours a day. And then from there, I moved to, worked in the music business in Nashville, and eventually moved to Pujo Pongo, Ecuador, where I lived with a tribe of Indians there in the Amazon rainforest basin. I moved to Sweden, where I worked in the music business in Stockholm, and then traveled up to northern Sweden and climbed to the top of Mount Kebnekaise, high above the Arctic Circle. That was awesome. I learned clowning, juggling, unicycle riding. This is with Ringling Brothers in Chicago. I'm the one with the red hair in the front there. That's me. Fire eating, glass eating. I learned skydiving. I worked in the music business there in Nashville. What am I missing? In 2012, I saw Mount Everest at sunrise. It was beautiful. It was awesome. 3-4 weeks ago, I saw Mount Ararat in Armenia. Awesome. So I learned clowning, juggling, fire eating, glass eating, blockhead, unicycle riding, stilt walking. And in 1997, I heard there were less than a dozen sword swallowers left in the entire world. I said, that's about as close as you can get to real magic. I think I'm going to try that. I met a sword swallower by the name of George the Giant, 7'3". I asked him for some tips. He said, I'll give you 2 tips. Number 1, it's extremely dangerous. Dozens of people have died doing it. That's why there's less than 12 sword swallowers left in the world today. Number 2, don't try it. So guess what I did? I added it to my list of thrones. And I began practicing. I practiced 10 to 12 times a day, every day for 4 years, a total of about 13,000 unsuccessful attempts before I got the first sword down my throat in 2001. And during that time, I set a throne to become the world's leading expert in sword swallowing. I set out to find every book, magazine, newspaper article, medical report I could find on sword swallowing. I studied anatomy, physiology, talked with doctors and nurses, networked all the sword swallowers together into the Sword Swallowers Association International, which is now based right here in Tampa, Florida. I conducted a 2-year medical research paper on all the sword swallowers worldwide that was published in the British Medical Journal that won the 2007 Ig Nobel Prize in Medicine. So it was kind of a crazy journey, but I learned some fascinating insights from sword swallowers on the subject of sword swallowing, many that I bet you've never, ever thought about before. But you will after today. Next time you're cutting your food with a knife or you see a sword on the wall, you'll think about this. I learned that sword swallowing started about 4,000 years ago in ancient India, southern India, where I first witnessed it as a 20-year-old kid. And over the past 150 years, we know that there have been hundreds of injuries in sword swallowing and dozens of deaths. We know that over the past 150 years, sword swallowers have been used in the fields of science and medicine to develop the rigid endoscope in 1868 on a sword swallower by Dr. Adolf Kussmaul, the electrocardiogram on a sword swallower in Wales in 1906, bronchioscope, fluoroscope, endoscope. During that time, well, actually up until now, we have every year from about 3 to 8 serious injuries that require hospitalization worldwide, and that there have been hundreds of injuries and 29 deaths, including, there's the rigid endoscope, 29 deaths, including this sword swallower who impaled his heart with a sword in London. I held his heart at the British Museum in London. But the most fascinating tidbit, the secret that I learned on doing the impossible from sword swallowers, and is absolutely fascinating. Here's the secret I learned from sword swallowers. Don't focus on the 99% that's impossible. Instead, focus on that 1% that's plausible and figure out how to make it possible. The impossible is only impossible until it's not. The only difference between the impossible and the possible is focus and determination, or as like you said, persistence. So now I'm going to take you on a little journey into the mind of a sword swallower. In order to swallow a sword, it requires mind over matter meditation, razor-sharp concentration, pinpoint accuracy in order to isolate internal organs, overcome automatic body reflexes, to create reinforced brain synapses in the brain through repeated muscle memory of deliberate practice over 10,000 times in order to impale my body of flesh and blood with a sword of solid steel. Now let me take you into a little journey into the body of a sword swallower. And now I want you to imagine you're going to swallow a sword. First, you lick the blade. You can taste the cold, hard steel, the metallic taste. Then you slide the blade into your mouth, repress the gag reflex in the back of the throat, navigate a 90-degree turn down the esophagus. When you get down the esophagus, you have to repress the peristalsis reflex in the back of the throat, flip open the epiglottis, find the proper alignment into the esophagus, down the epiglottis, repress that peristalsis reflex, get the sword between the lungs. When you get to the center of the chest, the heart kind of finds the highest concentration the highest concentration of blood vessels in the human body is the heart. So I actually have to nudge my heart aside, and you can see the blade beat with the heart like that. Then I go past the heart, through the diaphragm, relax the lower esophageal sphincter, slide the blade past the liver and kidneys down into the stomach, repress the Retz reflex in the stomach, all the way down to the duodenum at the base of the stomach. You'll see it coming up right about here. There's the heart on the right. There's the stomach right there. And if I were to go further than that, all the way down to my fallopian tubes. Piece of cake. Now, people often tell me, they say it must take courage to risk your life, to swallow a sword. and to nudge your heart and swallow a sword. But no, what takes real courage is for that scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid to stand up here in front of a bunch of total strangers and risk failure and rejection, to bare his heart, swallow his pride, and stand up here and tell you his simple story of his fears and dreams, to risk spilling his guts, both literally and figuratively. You see, I always wanted to do the impossible in my life. I always wanted to do something really remarkable with my life, and now I am. But the remarkable thing is not that I can swallow 21 swords at once. See if we can get the video up here. 21 swords at once, or 20 feet underwater in a tank of sharks and stingrays for Ripley's, believe it or not, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Or heated to 1,500 degrees red hot for Stan Lee's Superhumans, and that sucker was hot. As a man of steel, they called me the man of steel, dream fulfilled. Or to pull a car by swallowed sword from Ripley's, believe it or not, Baltimore, Maryland. Or to swallow a curved sword to make it to the finals on America's Got Talent. Or to win the 2007 Ig Nobel Prize in medicine. No, that's not really the most remarkable thing. The really remarkable thing is that God could take that scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid who was afraid of heights, afraid of water and sharks and doctors and nurses and speaking to people. Now he's got me speaking around the world, traveling at heights of 30,000 feet, swallowing sharp objects underwater in tanks of sharks, and speaking to doctors and nurses and audiences like you all over the world today. That's kind of the most incredible thing for me. You see, I always wanted to do the impossible with my life, now I am. I always wanted to do something really remarkable with my life, and now I am. I always wanted to fly around the world doing superhuman feats and saving lives, and now I am. But you know what? There's still a small part of that little kid's big dream deep inside. You know, for all those bullies with the dodgeballs, all those kids who said I'd never be able to do the impossible, I've got just one thing to say. Thank you. Because if it wasn't for villains, we wouldn't have superheroes. I told you I don't like words. I've learned that actions speak louder than words. So I'm here today to prove to you that the impossible is not impossible. This is extremely dangerous. It could kill me. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to need your help with this. No. I need your help on the counting part, okay? If you know the words. Okay, practice, shall we? Here it goes. 1, 2, 3. No, that's 2, but you've got the idea. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Actually, thank you from the bottom of my stomach. I told you I was going to do the impossible today, and now I have, but it wasn't swallowing that sword. I do that every day. That's the easy part. For me, the impossible thing was for that scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid to stand up here on the stage, cut through his fear, and change the world by cutting through fear, one sword at a time, one word at a time, one life at a time, and to inspire you to be superheroes and do the impossible in your life. I've found my purpose and calling, and here's what it is: to change the world, to inspire others to find theirs. What is your purpose? What's your calling? What were you put here to do? Out of a world population of 7 billion people, each one of you is individually different. What were you put here to do? What is your superpower? I believe we're all called to be superheroes and change the world. What is your story? Tell your story, even if your voice is thin and shaky. What is your sword? Your double-edged sword of fears and dreams. Swallow your sword, ladies and gentlemen. Follow your dreams. It's never too late to do whatever you always wanted to do. If a scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid can do the impossible, so can you. So let me leave you with this. The impossible is not impossible. And I believe that, ladies and gentlemen, is a gift worth spreading. Long walk, part of the gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.